Hi, Rex Rogers with Sat7. I'm here in Cairo, Egypt. We got in yesterday after a flight over the pond overnight, uneventful, thankfully, and got in about 5:30. No problems along the way, and no problems getting into our hotel not too far from this massive airport in this massive city, which itself is a very interesting place to be. We didn't get out and about today. I spent my time in Sat7 staff meetings, but it was a good meeting all day. But it caused some reflection when you hear from international colleagues and the kinds of things that the church is facing in the Middle East and North Africa. Not the same in every country, but a number of these countries where rulers and religion and regimes put a great deal of pressure on minorities, and particularly Christians, and particularly the church from all different denominations and backgrounds. When you think about what they're facing, or people in general, there's war. There's certainly extensive poverty. Unemployment is rampant. You got things like human rights violations that come in all different kinds of forms, whether a lack of freedom of speech or restrictions, certainly on freedom of religion. And then, of course, that affects other kinds of freedoms, including mobility. The ability of women to move around and to do different things legally in these various countries and cultures is quite challenging. When you think about what they face, I mean, they end up in despair sometimes, and yet the church in the Middle East and North Africa in these countries, we heard from a report today, specifically from Algeria, where churches recently have been closed by the government, and these are Algerians talking to us in person, and they're talking about the fact that their church has been closed, and what they're doing in response to that, how they're living, what they're able to do. And they're standing there with smiles on their faces, not because they're happy about this, but they've chosen hope and they've chosen joy, and they know what that means to trust God in his sovereignty and to trust him in the face of what we'd consider this, unshakable kinds of challenges to our well-being. And it made me think again in terms of perspective a little bit about the U.S., my country that I love and where I live and spent my life, but to think about our politics, where a lot of it is about personality. A lot of it really is about identity politics, as we say these days, us versus them in various ways, and who gets a slice of the pie. Some of it is about celebrity and the vapidness of celebrity. I'm not saying celebrities should never make a comment on anything that's serious, but sometimes when they try, you just assume they're not, because they don't have a lot of depth, some of them, and some of them, of course, do. But that's the kind of thing that we deal with all the time in our country. And of course, we're putting up with a lot of political party posturing and the politicization of everything today, and the divisiveness and rancor in public discourse, that if you watch the news much in the U.S., you would be forgiven if you didn't walk away disillusioned and discouraged. But really, when you think about, I'm not saying there aren't important problems, and I'm not saying there aren't some people suffering and some challenges in the United States, but when you think about, for the most part, what we face or don't face versus what's going on in the rest of the world, and particularly in North Africa and the Middle East, there's no comparison. And we do well to gain some perspective in that. And then spiritually speaking, or speaking as a Christian, to the idea of choosing hope, choosing joy. It doesn't mean the problems go away, but you recognize, theologically, you recognize spiritually within yourself, and you own that, and you trust God that he's sovereign. He's not surprised. He hasn't gone away. He isn't asleep. He's engaged, just as engaged as ever been, providential involvement of everything that's going on in and around us. He's involved with us on a micro level. In our individual lives, he's certainly involved with us on a macro level of what takes place in society and culture. So all that's going through my head today, sitting in these meetings and listening to colleagues again, and who face far more challenging circumstances than, frankly, I've ever faced in my life, and that most of us can say in terms of our U.S. experience. And that's a blessing, but it's also something to think about in a way of putting things in some kind of a level of understanding so that we don't overreact to our own problems, or that we respond to them properly. So that's the day. We'll be going out to dinner soon. That'll be fun with colleagues out and about somewhere in Cairo. But again, a fantastic city, and certainly we'll get out a little bit later this week, Lord willing, what we're doing. But great to talk to you, and I'll see you again from Cairo.